Thrilled to be here, and I've been known Harold since he was a little boy, thankfully, and know his parents, and thrilled that he's here in Wyoming and in Riverton sharing God's Word with you all. I met my wife in the Adventures in Missions program. She was from Livingston, Montana, and over the years we ended up back in Livingston preaching in '98. I preached for 30 years locally. I'm from the Toronto area in Canada originally, and we did a church plant outside of Toronto way back in '85. For those of you who are younger, you didn't exist then, but some of you. Yeah, I was looking right here. And so we did that originally, and church in Michigan sponsored our ministry, thank the Lord, and we've got really good relationships with that church there. And I spent 5 years there, but mostly in Stratford, Ontario, on the Avon River. It's a Shakespeare place that they've got this a theater. It's like people all in the Northeast U.S. go to Stratford to see their really professional plays. So it's a cool place, really Victorian, developed over the last 100 years. But I'm thrilled to be out here in the West. I love it. And 8 years ago, I started serving with Orphans, Lifeline. And they started this ministry when I was preaching in Livingston. And I like to say that I was not necessarily a real compassionate person when I was a young preacher. You know, you're just kind of driven. I'm type A, and but we would go to Family Christian Bookstore in Bozeman, and every time we checked out, they had World Vision children plastered by the checkout, and they said, "Will you sponsor one of our children?" And I said no, but walked out feeling guilty about that. And so I know, you look back and it's like God was putting something on your heart. You were feeling guilty that there's, sometimes we ignore emotions that have a real effect that they should have on us. But so, as we transitioned through life 8 years ago, we were ready to do something different, and we kind of hooked up with Orphans Lifeline. And I've been really thrilled to share in this ministry the last 8 years. They started in the around 2000. The preacher in Kalispell, Jim Miller at the time, was doing some mission work in far eastern Russia. And some of the members went with him on a couple trips, and they ended up adopting children from Russia. And so they thought that they might help people adopt children from Russia. And they did that a little bit, but as they saw the need and how great it was, they ended up starting this charity for Churches of Christ to be involved in helping these orphans around the world. They originally had their mindset on Eastern Russia, far Eastern Russia, which is really a third world country. It's amazing. But, this has grown to be a very large ministry. And so what they saw, I'll show you a picture of this little fella a little bit later. This little boy, they went to orphan homes in Eastern Russia. And they went to one home, and they didn't hear any babies crying, and they thought that this home had babies. And they said, "Do you have babies here?" "Yes, that's what we have. We have babies here." But there was no crying. And so because if you get no response from your crying, you eventually quit crying, which is remarkable, and you can only imagine the emotional damage that is done to these babies from that effect. They had babies in cribs that they didn't even have diapers on them because there weren't enough people to take care of them. They just soiled the cribs, and it's pretty sad, I guess, the state of affairs. And this little fellow was set aside. They said, "What about him?" They said, "Well, just leave him alone. He's going to die." And they're like, "Why?" Well, they didn't have any medicine. So they went to town and got medicine, and this little boy survived, thank the Lord. But that girl, cockroach bite on her face, and just dilapidated buildings, and in the sewers, of course. And you've maybe seen different pictures from around the world, medicine cabinets that are empty, little bits of food that they were going to try to, make last, and a lot of these kids are in the dumps. You'll see it, and I don't know how many people would have seen what was it, Slumdog Millionaire? Really weird movie, but it was based on some of the starving kids in India, and it was quite remarkable. But you see the kids in the dumps just trying to find scraps to survive. And so these girls here were picked up, and they're in our home in Haiti. There's 2 homes that we have in Haiti, and I'll explain that, and I'll show you a picture of them after a little while. So over the last 20 plus years, what happened, as you can see, Barnaul and Khabarovsk were the regions that the missionaries over there had been working at, and so I've got a lot of dots there because there's dozens of homes that the missionaries there take funds. The funds are sent to them, and they go out and buy things for those Russian homes, to school equipment, playground equipment, sports equipment. All the children get Bibles, but that's about all we can do spiritually for the children in Russia, is get them a Bible. And so that's part of the ministry. That's where the ministry started, and there's still maybe a quarter of our funds that go to help these children in Eastern Russia. But over the years, the Philippines, India, the dots are the homes we have there. So 6 in India, 2 in Pakistan, 5 in Kenya, 4 Uganda, 1 Liberia, 2 Haiti, 1 Mexico. And so we're working with these homes that the managers have been, now we've been working with them for dozens of years at this point, 20 years, some of them, 23 years when 20 years for sure, some of them. They know extremely well. And so, I could tell you a lot about, there's a lot of accounting for the funds at these homes. The managers have to do so much effort to report, so much reporting on the funds. We have people that stop in to the homes. If you have any idea, the fraud in child care around the world is tremendous. And so just it has to be really carefully managed. Years ago, they ran into a church in Texas that had an orphan's home that they were helping somewhere in India. And they said, oh, well, we're going to have one of our guys near that, right near there. Would you like us to have him stop in and check on the work? And they were like, no, everything's fine. And they said, well, why don't we just have him stop in? They're, okay. And so he stopped at midnight, 1 o'clock, and knocked on the door. That's how you check on an orphan home to know if it's doing what they say they're doing. And of course, there was no children there. And so what they found out, that church in Texas had sent thousands of dollars over there, and they had gone and visited a few times, but every time they planned ahead, well, we're coming, August 30th, and we'll be there. And so that guy hired children to be at his home so that he had children when they came to visit. But he had no orphan children that he was caring for. And so that's just minuscule example of the fraud and people taking American money, because you know how desperate people in third world countries are for American money. And I don't even want to get into the kidnapping and slavery that's going on in the world. I haven't seen that new movie, Sound of Freedom. I want to watch that, and it's just unreal what's going on in our world. Why are there so many orphans? Well, war, for one thing, and Ukraine, there's going to be hundreds of orphans from a war like that, and diseases that we've pretty much eradicated, water, meat markets like this, that are just out there. And somebody pointed out the toilet paper over there on the right-hand side. I'm sure they're using that to blow their nose. That's what I do with toilet paper. But you just don't know. Outhouses for elementary children, not very sanitary, so illness. And one thing that I wouldn't have even dreamt of, alcohol and drug problem in third world countries where they don't have any money and they can't feed their children. And yet that's a terrible situation. And so Our oldest daughter, and her husband went and taught their teachers in a fly-in village in Alaska on the Kuskokwim River. And they had 20 some odd children, K to 12, of Inuits that they had in the school. And so we Americans provide schools for these children in these villages out in Alaska. The Inuit people there don't like the Americans, for one thing, which is like, we're teaching your children. They just don't really they don't appreciate it. But what do they have? There's no drugs or alcohol allowed in those villages. The only way to get there is to fly in, fly out. They have a drug and alcohol problem, terrible drug and alcohol problem. It's third world conditions. They live off the land, literally, the people there. And so that kind of opened my eyes to the reality that it doesn't matter if you don't have any money. You can get drugs and alcohol and not feed your children. And so having no hope and being all alone are the things that you experience. And you can see it in the children's eyes. These are pictures taken when they're being brought to the home. And you can see the fear in their eyes. Like, nothing good has happened to me in my life. What is this now? And so the little girl with the cockroach bite on her face, and it doesn't have to be this way. We can change their lives. And so this is a great picture of a child coming to the home, and after a few years of being loved and cared for and fed and taught the Word of God, and the joy that you can see in his face is awesome to see. And this is Widnadine that was in that first group of the girls sitting on the box. She was the girl in the middle. Kathy and I have sponsored her for the last 9 years. And to see the change in her life is amazing. And I've got a more updated picture of her yet to come. But just bringing awareness and the possibilities of things that we can do to help some of these children. There's multiple millions, over 100 million they talk about orphans in the world out there. And we're not talking about the United States. This is all international third world conditions that Orphans Lifeline has worked in. We do support here in the United States our children's homes. You might help Mountain States Children's Home like we do in Montana. And they're great ministries, but they're helping troubled children from troubled homes. They're not orphan children. They're not on the street children. These children are on the street with no parents, or parents who can't care for them, literally on the street starving, and probably won't live to adulthood. Here in America, we at least have a social safety net to help children. Not in third world countries, it's not there. And so that's some of the difference. But Orphans Lifeline's design is to care for their everyday needs, get them everything that they need, and then to provide a private education. All of these children are in a private school. You will not get a good enough education in a third world country in the public schools to move on to higher learning. And that's our desire, is that they would move on to higher learning. And to show them God's love, teach them about Jesus. And I like to say that I think number 3 should be number 1, but it has to be number 3 because we have to feed them and teach them to read so they can get to number 3. And so that's a little different than our normal take with adults, you know. And so saving them off the streets from starvation. You can see these children getting some food from that cauldron, and they're eating like they do in Africa. And so these are not homes that are upscale American standard homes. These are Christians in these countries that had a desire to save some of these orphans, and they started caring for them. Orphans Lifeline has not started any orphan homes at all. They have come beside local people that are caring for orphans and are helping them do it better. And that's Orphans Lifeline's model. There are no Americans on site at any of the homes. They're all native peoples caring for these children so that they will grow up in their culture, be a part of their culture, and God willing, be a blessing to their culture, knowing God. And so seeing their smiling faces because they're getting food, they're getting water, They're getting doctor care, dental care, whatever, eye care, whatever's available in their area, and whatever we can do to help those children that you as a parent would do for your child. I think it's probably 2 years ago now that one of the little girls in Africa had a heart condition, and Orphans Lifeline raised the money to fly her to India where she could have her heart surgery, and sent a worker with her, a guardian, and she was there for a few weeks and came back to the home. And so their Orphans Lifeline is going to do whatever possible to care for these children. So to provide a private education, you can see in the top left and bottom right is the same school. It's in Liberia, Safe Home in Liberia, where they have a school on site. Some of them have schools on site, some of them have private teachers that come in, some of them go off to private teachers, whatever the case for each home. But this is Safe Home in Liberia. We've been supporting Safe Home for 6 or 7 years now, and that home was started by Ron Popberg, who is a vice president for World Bible School, and he's in Liberia every year. And John Travis, who was running this home, he met John in refugee camps in Guyana. Guinea. The South American one and the African one mix me up. Guyana. And so Guyana, the refugee camps, because Liberia and Sierra Leone were having civil war. And there's a movie about that also, Blood Diamonds. I had to think about it. It's probably 15 years old now, Blood Diamonds. And it was kind of an ugly movie. I wouldn't recommend you watching it. But that was about that conflict. And I think Kathy and I watched it after I visited with Ron. Ron was a classmate of mine at Sunset School of Preaching, and he had ended up working with World Bible School. He's flying around the world into these regions and working with the World Bible School regional peoples, native peoples that are working there. Ron told me that if there was an organization leading more people to Christ, he'd be working with them. World Bible School is still leading hundreds or thousands of people to the Lord through their programs. But he knew John, had worked with him at the refugee camp. When he got to go back to Liberia, he started this orphan home. And so it's doing extremely well since we've been able to start helping them again. And we've got the school opened, which had closed because of funding. We've got a medical clinic opened again, which had closed because of the war and funding. And so we have all that running again, which it's just awesome. And so to see these kids doing their studies and learning, and I tell them, if young people are watching, it's like they're a little more primitive desks than we have here in America, but they serve the purpose. These kids are learning and growing. And life skills, here I had to throw these in because these kids are making sandals, making footwear to have in their culture. And so really learning really good skills. And most all of these homes have some kind of agriculture that they're participating in. So the kids will learn agriculture so they can grow their food when they're out on their own, or they could do some agriculture for their livelihood. Safe Home in Liberia is, I think, on 40 acres, and there was a year-round spring there. And so Ron's always trying to come up with ideas to make them more self-sustaining. So they have the agriculture. With the year-round spring, he was like, we could grow rice. And so the kids and the staff there dug these ponds for rice paddies. I guess it doesn't have to be very deep, but you have to have like that pond effect for rice paddies. And so they were growing rice, and they dug them deeper because he decided we need protein more than we do rice, and so they're raising fish in the ponds now. And so that's the efforts that they're going to care for themselves. We're helping people. We're not doing it for them. We're helping them learn to do it for themselves. And so, as I said, different things, chickens, different ones have pigs, cows, goats, whatever they can do in their area. This is a young fella that graduated from the home, and he works in this shirt shop selling shirts. And now these two pictures I have here are two guys that were going to university from Safe Home. And so that's our goal, is that they'll get to go to university or get into some kind of skills training, a trade, that they can have a livelihood for themselves. They can be mature, serving Christians in their culture. Now, will all of them be faithful Christians when they grow up? No, they will not be, because all of our children in America are not faithful Christians when they grow up. That's not a reality. But they know why they're alive. They know they're alive because of Christians in America have fed them for the last 20 years. That's why they're alive and thriving. And so they love, there's all kinds of letters from, most recently in our newsletters, a newsletter goes out every month from the office. And this spring, they've had a lot of letters in the newsletters from these kids writing about how much they appreciate and love us. We get a note from Widnadine, and she'll have on it, love Widnadine. She doesn't know us. She doesn't know what we look like, but love Widnadine, the note she'll send us. And so it's awesome to see these young guys going off to university. And these are intelligent, amazing people. And sometimes we can think, well, what, these Africans, are they faithful Christians? Are they this? Are they that? I said to Ron Popberg, who's in Africa, all the time, he's there, I'm sure, 20 weeks out of 52. I said to Ron, we were sitting down visiting, and we're old friends. I said, Ron, what are the Christians like? Are they, this week they're Church of Christ, and next week the Baptists come in with some money and they're Baptists or they're whatever? He said, no, Calvin, that's not what it's like. He said, my best friends are in Africa. Oh, that's interesting. That's a testimony to the quality of people that he's working with in Africa. He said, my best friends are over there, not here in America. He said, they love the Lord because they don't have all these toys and stuff to distract them. Their eyes are set on the Lord and serving him and ministering to him. And it's pretty impressive. So leading them to the grace of our God, and to see the pictures of them in reading their Bibles or in Bible classes. When I started, I'm an evangelist. I want people to be Christians. And so to switch from being a full-time preacher to transitioning to being kind of a fundraiser, which I don't like to call myself, because I'm a preacher. But I'm an advocate now. I'm an orphan advocate. And so I said, how much are these kids studying the Bible? I want to know that they're learning about Jesus and God. They study the Bible a lot. They study it a lot, they tell me. And I said, no, I want to know. I don't want you to just tell me they study a lot. So they asked the managers to tell them how much are the kids in their Bible every day. And they sent back and said that they're in Bible classes or reading their Bible or in devotionals a couple hours a day, that they're doing that. And wouldn't it be a different world here in America if our children were in their Bibles a couple hours a day? Our things would be a little different here than the conditions we're dealing with. And so it's awesome to know that that's so important to them. All the children, as I said, this is Eugene Bikoff in Russia signing Bibles for these children. So, the children all get Bibles. And so at least we know they have Bibles. If we sponsor children as an individual or a church sponsoring a child, we get to put a little note in their Bible. So a church in Washington State sponsored these two children and so when they got their Bible, what's nice about Liberia? What language they speak? English. They speak English in Liberia. Isn't that weird? You know why? because most of our slaves in America came from that region. And I didn't know this. Now, you have to understand one thing. I grew up in Canada, so I didn't learn a lot of American history. I'll use that for one excuse. But after the Civil War, a lot of slaves went back to Africa. And they went back to Liberia and Sierra Leone. And so they were educated people that went back to Liberia, educated slaves that were set free. And so Liberia, and the Civil War that they had in the 70s was because of that situation. It created two classes of people, those that had been in America and were better educated, and the natives that weren't. And so it ended up creating a civil war there over it. But they speak English, which is awesome. I haven't been there, but if I go, I can speak to them, which without a translator. When I speak for Spanish people, I need a translator. I know Canadian. That's all I know. And so this is one of the churches there that the home's close to there in Liberia. And to see the kids around the world being baptized into Jesus Christ is really a thrilling thing because of the little bit that we can do from here in America. And so these kids are thankful to God for American Christians who are providing for them. And to see their conditions. I throw this picture in, and I've got another one later, just because she looks beautiful and she's dressed beautifully. And I look at that and I think, I have 7 grandchildren, only 2 granddaughters. But I would love for one of my granddaughters to be dressed in those clothes right there. And isn't that cool? This little girl in a third world country that would be in a dump fending for food is dressed like that because of our care for them. Safe Home in Liberia, these are some of the school kids. You can see they're in their uniforms. Most of the world wears uniforms to school. America is a holdout from most of the world. But they needed more school space, and I like this picture because they're making their own cement blocks to build their school. And so we provided the funding, they built the school, and here you have it. And also this medical clinic, that's some of the medical staff that are there. So that medical clinic is there for the orphan home, but also the community that's there. So they're doing the inoculations and things that kids need, and the kids in that small community that's near them. And so we've been able to provide that. Learning Estate Children's Home is in India, and we helped them build a new building. This manager lost the facility he was in, and he was having a hard time finding facilities, and a brother in the Lord gave him this property, and most of the money to build this building was provided by the church in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. They provided the funding to get this school building up, and property and housing for them. And so this is more of the finished product. But these are all the kids that are benefiting from that one home there. To see the kids and the joy in their faces, I find great joy in that. This is some of the kids that have graduated from that one home. This girl's a nurse, and this picture was in the newsletter one month that I live 5 hours from Kalispell. Oh, thank you. My local Montana wife, 7 hours from Kalispell. And so I'm not up there very much. I'm on the road. That's my job, is to be on the road sharing about the ministry. And I called and I said, I want to know what these girls are doing. It said they went back to visit their manager on the newsletter. I said, well, what are they doing with their life now that they're out of there? Because that's what I want to show people, what the results are of this ministry. And so you can see there the different situations that these girls are in. They obviously must be friends and have come back to visit together. And so I was impressed with that. I think 2 years ago now, we started helping this Harrison in Kenya. Somehow, by the grace of God, how much time do I have, Harold? Till quarter till? Or 10. Yeah, okay, I'll speed up. But Harrison is an evangelist trained through Bear Valley School of Preaching. He saw a need for the widows and children in his area there, and he started Acts of Charity. And it's his 501c3. It's an NGO, non-government organization. And he started it, and we're funding that ministry now, getting widows provided for with their children and building these metal homes for them. And so we've built 12, 13 of the homes now, and the average cost, don't ask me why, it's $3,500 to provide a home for them and to pay for it. One of the other things we've been working on, David Board, who helped start this organization, died last year, and they're building a vocational school at Safe Home. John Travis has wanted that on site to train skills training for kids that won't be going to college, and so that's ongoing. This is the little boy I said was set aside to die. I had that picture of him for about the first 4 years of me doing this, and then I got to meet him at Oklahoma Christian University, Zach Jones. He was adopted by a family in Washington. They moved back to Oklahoma, where they were from, Oklahoma City area, and he grew up outside just on the, I think, Norman, Oklahoma, there by Oklahoma City. And I'd always heard, oh, he's doing so great. He's in the youth group there at the church. He's this, he's that. I met him at OC. He's a graduate. He's an engineer. And I said to him, I said, you're 1 in a million, because this just does not happen. You know, you're 1 in a million. And I said, I took his picture. I said, can I show your picture? He's an adult. I can't just show his picture. I bend the rules a bit here and there, as we all do, but I thought I better have his permission to show his picture around the country. But he was more than happy if it helps children. And so it's just neat to see this. This is another great picture of a young lady, Elizabeth, a baby wandering the streets starving, and she's in life of favor, and look at her growing up. And so transforming lives, that's that original picture with Widnadine. And this is 2013, a picture of the kids, and Widnadine's there at the bottom. And this is 2023, and there's Widnadine standing with the group of kids. They're all getting older there with the, oh boy, his name just slipped my mind. But he's an evangelist there in Haiti. He's an evangelist, and he saw these children starving, and he had to do something. And by the grace of God, we were connected to help him. There's requests all the time for aid from people. And so they've got to be really careful in deciding on how to help. These are little dots on the map of churches that are working with Orphans Lifeline. There's around 300 that are working with us in some capacity. And it's just been a privilege to work with them. What can we do? Well, you can see here the amounts of money that it takes. And, you know, you can provide for a child for $35. That was kind of the number I always heard from World Vision. $35, you can feed and clothe a child. And you can feed and clothe a child for $35. But to do everything, it's more than that. Orphans Sunday is how Orphans Lifeline started, was having a special collection. Can you just do one collection a year? In November, that was the time frame, a collection, a special collection for orphans. And last year we received over $300,000 from that one collection in November that we advertised. And sponsoring a child started right around the time Kathy and I started 8 years ago. They were just starting this program so that families, individuals, churches can sponsor a child. And if you sponsor a child, you get a picture of that child. And every 6 months you get an updated picture. And so it's you know, it's not like a real connection, but it is a phase that you have of a child that we're blessing. And so if you sponsor a child, your money is a designated gift, and it goes to that home. It doesn't go to that child. So Kathy and I send $100. Widnadine doesn't get that $100. It's a designated gift to that home. And so they know the more, if they can get all the children sponsored and say, then that home has its funding coming in. That's how they're using it in that sense. But we get a picture of a child that we can see growing and maturing, which is a joy. So that's the things that we can do individually to help. And I tell churches, you guys are doing lots of ministry here. You're probably doing some mission ministries. There's hundreds of great ministries for you to give your money to. And I realize that. This is just one that you maybe haven't heard of or haven't heard much about, that it's one more good one. I'm just saying this is an honorable ministry if you want to get into helping orphan children around the world, where a lot of us in Churches of Christ are helping to change children's lives. Over 850 children right now, today, are in our homes. And literally hundreds and thousands have been helped over the last 20 years. And so every dollar helps. You know, $10 feeds a child for a month. And so every dollar, some people, well, I can't sponsor a child. Well, I understand. Not everybody can. But, a dollar. I tell people, well, if I get 1 million people to give $1, we have $1 million. So, don't think, no amount's too little. You can just send money randomly if it's on your heart to do something. I think God touches us individually for certain ministries, because we can't all help every ministry. And so, if God's touching you for this ministry, the brochures are available, the contact information's on the back. Go to the website, and everything's on the website. If you want to give, you can give through the website. It's all there. And so let's have a prayer and wrap this time up. Our great God, we praise your holy name. We're so thankful, Father, for your blessings, your abundant care for us, for your awesome creation that we experience on a daily basis. And we're thankful we can be here today to be reminded of your great love and your great care for us. Help us, Father, to really turn our hearts over to you, to surrender our will to you, Father, so we can follow you and show your great care and compassion to the world around us. Help us experience the joy that you want us to have in life by following your word. It's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Before you walk away there, Kelvin, do you know off the top of your head, because this is a way that I think Orphans Lifeline stands out, what % of the donations go to the children?
Yeah, thanks, Harold. Their goal would be 90%, but I would say we're at about 87. 80% of the dollar goes into the program care. A very small administration cost. It's a little small house that they converted in Kalispell to the offices, and there's about six people working there. And really, it's amazing they can do this much care with that few of people really helping. So it's a lot, and they print everything in house. They lease an actual printer, not a copy machine, a printer that they print this in house, and that thing staples it and everything for them. And it's a huge cost saver from paying somebody to copy and print all this. So they try to do everything they can to save money so it can go into caring for the kids. So thanks for pointing that out, Harold. I forget to say everything, and I can't say everything. Thanks, everybody.
Question was raised as my conscience fell.